I'm Chris Oppie. I'm a professor of history at UMass and the director of the Ellsberg Initiative for Peace and Democracy. It's my great honor to welcome you to a public lecture by this year's Ellsberg activist in residence, Chris Smalls. His talk is called From Amazon to Gaza, Organizing, Solidarity, and Civic Courage. I've been eagerly awaiting this occasion. With peace and democracy in peril everywhere, more than ever, we need to hear what activists like Chris can teach us about organizing for a more just world. Before introducing Chris, though, a few words, please, you'll forgive me, about upcoming Ellsberg Initiative programs and a few thank yous. Next week, March 4th at 7 p.m., we have a webinar called Defending Democracy in the Stacks, a conversation with library professionals. March 19th at 7 p.m., I'll be doing an online interview with our Congressman Jim McGovern. March 25th, it'll be a 7 p.m. webinar called Suppressing Speech, the Trump Administration's Escalating Attacks on the First Amendment. April 7th, another 7 p.m. webinar called Targeting the University, Censorship, Political Power, and the Fight for Academic Freedom. Then on April 14th, on campus at 4 p.m., we have a special kind of unusual event called Be Seriously Scared. It's an interactive experience that combines performance art, film, lecture to explore the dangers of nuclear war and what we can do to move forward toward a world free of nuclear weapons. So that's mostly what we're doing in the spring, but there are many more details about it. If you're interested, please go to our website, which is a simple one. It's just EIPAD.org, named after Ellsberg Initiative for Peace and Democracy, EIPAD. And if you're able and so inclined, maybe you'll push on that big donate button that's on the homepage. You can always use that support. A few thank yous. First to Brennan Tierney, the program assistant for the Ellsberg Initiative, who's done so much of the detailed planning and organizing this year. And this year we're lucky enough to have 4 student interns, Melissa D'Addario, Sophie Grasser, Carter Sands, and Neil Zimmerman. I also want to thank a number of colleagues and departments across campus who have helped organize class visits and workshops. Chris was able to visit 6 classes over the last 2 days, which is quite amazing. He's talked to hundreds of students. Especially want to thank Sam Redman, Eric Ross, and Mohammed Attai in the history department, Sarah Trongone and Jerry Levinsky in the Labor Center, Noé Wiener in economics, Shimon Salam and Stepik, and Daniel Seltzer in the English department at Amherst Regional High School. He went over to the high school this morning to talk to those students. I'm also grateful for this year's co-sponsors, the Western Mass Area Labor Federation, the UMass Departments of History, English, Afro-American Studies, Political Science, Anthropology, along with Social Thought and Political Economy, STEPIC, Legal Studies, Public Policy, the Computational Social Science Program, and the Labor Center. After Chris's talk, we should have plenty of time for questions. Eve Weinbaum is kind enough to serve as moderator. She's a professor of sociology and labor studies who has been a community organizer and labor activist for some, well, decades. Let's leave it at that. She is also president of the UMass Faculty and Librarians Union. So after Chris's talk, Eve and Chris will sit there. Eve will get the ball rolling with a question or two and then turn it over to you. So think of questions as he talks, and if you're interested in asking one, we'd ask that you line up over here in front of this microphone, and we'll take as many as we can and still try to finish up by around 8:30. So now just a few words by way of introduction for Chris Smalls. He grew up in New Jersey. He had a brief career in music. And in 2015, he found himself on the shop floor of an Amazon warehouse with what they call fulfillment centers on Staten Island, New York. After 5 years of that, in the early weeks of the pandemic, appalled at the failure of this company to provide even basic safety protocols to protect their workers against this lethal disease, Chris led a walkout of workers for which he was instantly fired that day. And as a fired worker, he almost immediately set up a tent, kind of an encampment, outside the warehouse near a bus stop where the workers would come in every morning, set up a grill, would feed people, would talk to them face to face. And after 300 days of it, managed to get enough people to sign interest in organizing a union and then finally voting to successfully unionize this one warehouse of this Amazon company that employs now, what is it, Chris, 1.5 million people in this country, more worldwide. Yeah. And you should notice, I'm sure Chris will probably talk about some of this, Amazon spent tens of millions of dollars to try to keep this from happening and continues to do that. He was obviously the co-founder and then became the president of the Amazon Labor Union from 21 to 24. In 2022, Time magazine selected him as one of the 100 most influential people of the year. And more recently, he's gotten active in Palestine solidarity campaigns. Last summer, he participated in the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, which, as you probably know, was blocked by the IDF. They were towed to harbor, detained, and in Chris's case, abused, physically abused. That's those two interests, labor and Gaza, a really interesting combination. And it leads me to just want to mention briefly that an extraordinary documentary was made about the labor organizing drive at Amazon called Union. How many of you have seen that? Just a few. And there's a reason for that. Although it's really good, and it was shortlisted for an Academy Award, top 15 documentaries of the year, no major distributor picked it up. Why? Well, by that point, Chris had become active in these Gaza issues, and it seems quite clear that that was making these distributors skittish. So he had to travel all over the country just to show it to community groups. Now, ironically, you can catch it on Amazon Prime. Though maybe that's not ironic. It just shows you Amazon will sell anything. A movie that attacks it, as well as a movie about Melania, to curry favor with the Trump administration. I mean, anything goes. So, in any case, that's enough. We'll do one final thing. Chris has a book coming out in June, When the Revolution Comes. So maybe we'll try to get him back in the fall to give a book talk. So please join me in welcoming Chris Smalls.
And it's always an honor to come back to UMass. For those who don't know, this is my fourth visit here. I've been coming to UMass at least once a year since 2022 for various organizations and conferences and different movements. So I'm always honored to be here and to be this year's residency activist. So thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you all for welcoming me to your classes and your campus and your space. So, as Professor Chris Appy said, Amazon is going to be Amazon stopping the distribution of our film, trying to union bust by spending tens of millions of dollars. But I want to take y'all back, since I have enough time today, I get to take y'all back to how I became this worldwide labor leader and activist for many different struggles. It all started back in a single parent home. I was raised by a single black woman, my mother. I was the oldest child, the oldest son in the household. My father's been incarcerated since I was born, since 1988. So growing up, pretty much I had a lot of responsibilities on me as a younger kid. As a younger adult, I pretty much was out in the streets. You know, this is before technology was what it is today. So I think we grew up in the best era of the 90s, you know. Blame me, I'm biased. But the 90s, you know, is when we grew up in, and I grew up in Hackensack, New Jersey. And anybody from Jersey here? Just one? Don't worry, we're strong, don't worry, we're good. You know, and I grew up in this community, very diverse. Just reminded me today when I went to the high school, they have 4 towns that attend that regional high school. It's the same similarity in my town as well. We have 4 towns. My high school was pretty big though. We had about 3,000 students there. And yeah, I always had childhood dreams like any other kid to become a professional athlete. That was my first passion, playing basketball, playing football. I was a track star. And I thought that I was going to make it to the NBA and play for my favorite team, the New York Knicks. But unfortunately, life is life. It hit hard. And my first job at Target at 16 years old is what ended my NBA career, actually. When I was working as a sophomore in high school at my first job at Target, I was hit by a car. And not just hit, it was a hit and run. The couple had a nice car. They had a nice little Mercedes. And they ran over my leg and actually drove off. And another couple was able to get the license plate for me. That being said, I was able to, the police was able to track them down and they actually spent that weekend in jail. I filed the lawsuit and it came through my senior year. You know, it came through right on time for me to pay for college. And, you know, that unfortunate incident, it ended my aspirations of becoming a professional athlete because I wore a boot and had crutches my whole sophomore year. And I had to go through physical therapy. And going through all of that, you know, the doctor was telling me that, you know, I would never be 100%. You know, it's never going to heal to be 100%. And if I continue playing on it, that I may have to get surgery and you know, have to put some screws in my ankle. So I didn't do that. You know, I gave up basketball, unfortunately, and I started excelling in other sports. I also gave up football, but I started running track and became a really good track athlete, becoming the team captain for the last 2 years of my high school, junior year and senior year. But track wasn't my passion, you know. It was something to, you know, I guess keep me motivated, keep me in shape, and, you know, I was really, I really liked the team camaraderie and the morale of the locker room. I always liked being a leader, so I was happy to be the captain of my team. I ran 3 different events, the 4x4, the triple jump, and the long jump. And, you know, that, along with playing other sports, that developed who I am as a person, just trying to be somebody in the room that always care about the entire team, not just myself. But once again, that still wasn't my passion, you know. So actually my second passion was, as Professor Appy said, was also making music. I wanted to be either or, an NBA player or a professional or an international superstar rapper, you know, if you couldn't tell. And, you know, I actually had a really promising chance though. I started off as an independent artist. At 18 years old, doing a bunch of shows in New York City. I went to college in Florida while Bush was the president, so that didn't last long. I couldn't survive down there. I remember going down there for my first 2 semesters. I went to the Indian River State College, and I tried to transfer into Florida Atlantic University, but I was just too homesick. You know, going from a New York City area to Florida, like Central Florida, was a real culture shock. And as I mentioned, when Bush was the president, I think a gallon of gas was like it was just out of my reach at the time. So coming back home to New York, I transferred to a trade school for sound engineering called the Institute of Audio Research. And I only went there for one thing. I actually didn't go there to get the certificate. I went there so I could meet other people that was in the industry, producers, artists, you know, those who are sound engineers already, so that I can actually partner up with them so that I could make I was being selfish, but I wanted to make my first album. And I attended the school, I met some people, I dropped out, and I'm fully committed to becoming a rapper. And I bring this up because these are the same skill sets that I use to this day. And I did a bunch of showcases around New York City. I had a really good buzz in New Jersey as well. Believe it or not, I told some of the students in the classes that, A$AP Rocky used to come to my house. And he used to hang out with me, and we used to freestyle in front of my house because he used to be best friends with one of my cousin's best friends. And he lived in New Jersey after he lived in Harlem for a while. He moved to New Jersey about 5 minutes away from where I lived. So, he made a song called Pesos, and he blew up, and then I never heard from him again. But, no shade on him. I'm really happy to have spent those times with him, and glad to see that he's dating Rihanna, even though billionaires shouldn't exist. We'll give him a pass. But taking it back to those times, I was really good at my craft. I actually got offered 4 record deals as an independent artist because I was creating such a buzz. I used to, once again, before social media is what it is today, I know I'm telling my age a little bit, but this was before Instagram. This was before TikTok. This is before Snapchat. And all of these things, like MySpace and Facebook was still on the up and coming. But I was using just those 2 platforms. And along with Twitter, I think Twitter came in 2009. So I was using just 3 platforms, but most of my organizing to get people to come to my show as an independent artist happened right on a college campus, Fairleigh Dickinson University, which was the town over from where I grew up in Hackensack. And I used to go to that campus every weekend. I used to go to what we know as the mall. And I used to go to the mall and talk to people, invite them, hand out my flyers, go back to my high school, hand it out to seniors, and try to get people to come to my parties and perform. And it worked. I was able to bring out hundreds, sometimes a couple thousand people every weekend. And I did that for about 2 or 3 years until I met my ex-wife, my kid's mother. We got married really young. I got married at the age of 21. I had my kids by 22. I had twins. So imagine having no kids, and then all of a sudden the doctor calls me and said, "You're not having 1 baby, but 2." So my ex-wife, she already had one of our kids already. She had our oldest son a year prior. He was already 1 year old, and we went from a family of 3 to a family of 5 at young 20, 21, 22 years old. So as you can imagine, as an independent artist, I can tell you now there was no way I was going to be able to support my family and continue doing my music career. So I had to make a sacrifice. And that came with my music career going cold turkey. I gave it all up and started going back to work. Fast forward, my kids was born in 2012. So for a number of years, I was working a bunch of odds and end jobs, just working at a place they used to call Labor Ready, ironically. And it was this place basically where you would go and pick up a day-to-day job and get paid the same day. But the jobs they gave you were just horrible, really horrific conditions. Most of it was, restoration of like warehouses, of houses. During that time, we were hit with Hurricane Sandy. So we were doing a lot of cleanup jobs, and we barely had PPE. And it was just something for me to pay the bills, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I had to figure it out. And I worked multiple jobs. I had a day job and a night job and an in-between job. Because as I mentioned, me and my ex-wife and my 3 kids at the time, we were living check to check for sure, trying to navigate. And she was also going to college for nursing. So, fast forward to 2015. Before I got to Amazon, I was working at a grocery distribution warehouse in Carlstadt, New Jersey. I was actually already unionized. I was a part of a Teamster local at that grocery warehouse. I made the union. I was the youngest employee there. I was about 25 years old. And even though my job was unionized, it was still horrific conditions because it was a grocery distribution warehouse. It was the graveyard shift. And the contract that our Teamster local had signed was so horrible that, I was surprised that any adult signed that contract. And I'll tell you how I read it. I'll tell you what actually happened to get to that point. So basically, at my warehouse, majority of the employees were black and brown. The management was white, especially the upper management. And this company, before I even got there, they had a history of being racist to certain black and brown individuals. There was a lot of reports about workers disgruntled with management over the years. And this company had been around. It was a family-owned business, but it's been around for 70 years. And me being the youngest employee, not really understanding, to be an active union member. It was my first time getting into a union. I just knew I was paying union dues. Something happened to me to make me look at my union contract. One day, I decided to go to management, and I wanted to put in some vacation time. I wanted to take my family over the summer to Disney World for a week. And something told me, I don't know what it was. It was just, I guess it was the fear of people saying what management was. And I decided to put my little cell phone at the time on record. And I went to go talk to management about my vacation because I saw in my schedule that it wasn't approved when I had put it in weeks in advance. So going up to follow up about my vacation, the manager exploded on me. He stood up, he slapped his desk down, he yelled out a bunch of racist things, called me an idiot, called me this and that, and told me to get out of his office. And I calmly didn't even respond much. I just listened. I actually went right downstairs and I went to HR right away. That being said, HR is never your friend. Because what HR did was, of course, what they're going to do. They're going to protect the employer and the company. So they act like they were concerned. They took an initial report. They listened to my story. They were acting like they were horrified and act like they never heard that this happened before. And I'm like, I don't think so. But I ended up calling the union hall because I wanted to take further action because I felt that just wasn't right. It was the racist. I had a recording of it. I played it for them. I have evidence that this is happening and this ain't the first time. So I tried to follow up once again, going through my union, and we actually had an arbitration about my case. And unfortunately, I thought the union was going to fight for my rights, and they actually, in a part of the arbitration, they asked me, well, what do you want to do with the manager? I said, well, it's a no-brainer. He needs to be fired. Absolutely, get up out of here. There's no way that this man should be working, supervising people when he's using this type of rhetoric. And I thought the union was going to agree to that, but they actually came back and told me that they gave him a coaching. And I said, absolutely not, that's ridiculous. But they also offered me immunity for 3 months, meaning that I was able to come to work late, I was able to leave when I want, do whatever I want, and nothing was going to happen to me for 3 months. Now, don't get me wrong, I took full advantage of that. But I knew that wasn't justice, and I knew something else was wrong. So I went to my shop stewardess, who actually he was my friend at the time, and I said, let me see that contract. And when I read this contract, I don't think a 10-year-old would have signed it because it basically said that we are not getting any raises for 10 years. And I was like, what? Like we're making decent money, but it's not great. And I'm like, who would sign a contract that doesn't give us any raises for 10 years? And at the same time, I told my mom about the situation. My mom is the reason why I started working at Amazon. I'll tell you that right now. She called me up one day and said, Amazon is opening up this brand new warehouse fulfillment center in Carlstadt, New Jersey, and this is 2015. And I said, all right, I didn't really have the time to apply. So actually, my mom put the application in for me. But the building was being built, so it was going to take about a year or so, or 6 months or so to start opening up. But we had to do the initial process, the hiring process, months in advance. So I went through with it. I went with the process, even though I still was working at the graveyard shift. And I gave them my 2 weeks, and I actually left a unionized job to go to an ununionized job, expecting that Amazon was going to be filled with a lot of opportunities in this brand new warehouse in New Jersey. And at the time, back in 2015, Amazon was nowhere near where it is now. Back in 2015 in New Jersey, that fulfillment center was probably the second one that they had in the entire state. Now they probably have over 27 of them. But just to tell you, I saw the vision of how the company was going to expand. At the time, of being very young and not being an activist, not being aware. Amazon was still in its beginning stages as well when it came to delivery. So there wasn't that much controversy around Amazon at the time. A lot of people, what I like to say, go through this honeymoon phase when they get hired. They go there, they like, oh, big name company, Amazon. They put on their gear and they think that they're doing something notable and, helping out their community. But at the same time, we don't realize how much society has changed because of Amazon over the course of the 30 years of its existence. And I still took the opportunity because, I wanted to get off the graveyard shift, and I was able to do that going to Amazon. I worked the first shift, and I was actually making a little bit more money than I was. Even though I went through my honeymoon phase at Amazon, I saw the opportunity of becoming an upper management. I figured because I came from a warehouse that was actually more strenuous on your body, the time I got to Amazon, the productivity that I was doing was twice the amount that they were requiring at the time. And I'll give you an example. In my department, you're required, they call it the picking department. So what happens is every worker who's at a station is required to pick over 250 items an hour for 10-hour shifts, right? And I was doing 500, 600 items an hour. They never seen it that high at a manual station. We actually didn't have automatic stations like we have now. But back then we had manual stations. So on a manual station, I was doing twice the productivity. And I didn't realize how valuable I was to the company. My building, during my 9 months as a warehouse associate, my building was #1 in the entire Amazon network, meaning that we were producing the highest numbers, mainly because I was a really good worker. And I had no idea the value that I was contributing to the company and the productivity until I was promoted into that same position that oversees that department. But that didn't happen until later that year. But what Amazon did, they saw that I was a really good picker. They saw that I was doing twice the productivity. They were blown away. So what they did, they would hire new management and have the managers come watch me work all day long and learn how I did it. And what they did, they made me what they call an ambassador, meaning that now I'm able to train other people to be faster and work as hard as I did. And when I did that, Amazon looked at the whole entire department and said, once we get to a certain percentage, we're going to gradually raise the rate. So over the years, the rate started, as I mentioned, in 2015 to 250 items an hour. They went up to 300. Then they went to 350. Then they went to 375. Now, till this day, it is 400 items an hour. Because they now see a large population of people that are able to produce that same amount of productivity. So I'm the reason that actually Amazon raised the rates across the entire Amazon network because I was so good at my job. That being said, it helped me get promoted. I became an assistant manager at Amazon my first year. I oversaw the department that I got hired in. And my team was the #1 team in the entire warehouse and the entire Amazon network under my supervision. And Amazon trusted me so much that actually as an assistant manager, you're not a salaried manager, you're still hourly. You don't get the same perks as salaried managers. To become a salaried manager, you have to apply after 2 years of employment, or you have to have a college degree. I didn't have a college degree, so I was going to go internally and try to apply after my 2-year anniversary, which I did. Sad to say, I never got the opportunity to become a salary manager. I figured that out during COVID-19, 2020, that it was never going to happen for me. Well, before I get to that point, I was a modeled employee. I was a model supervisor. I never forgot where I came from. All the new hires that would get hired at Amazon, I treated them with respect and dignity, because Amazon will hire people as old as 80 to as young as 18. And once again, we're spending 50, 60, 70 hours a week with these folks. I considered them my extended family, and I never wanted them to lose their job. I thought that everybody that came in had some type of skill set to provide, but Amazon didn't see it that way. They only look at us like numbers and robots, and what Jeff Bezos calls us, in his own words, are industrial athletes. And that being said, over the years, I saw a lot of good people burn out, get fired, get injured, because if y'all don't know, Amazon is the #1 company for injuries in our country. That means even over the industrial industry, Amazon, a retail company, has the highest injury rate in our country, and it's been that way for years. So I would see ambulances pulling up every day, every other week, people getting carried out, people fainting, and yes, people even dying on the warehouse floor. I've seen it all. And over the years, I opened up 3 different warehouses. My first building was New Jersey, Carteret, EWR 9. My second building was Windsor, Connecticut, BDL 2. And my last building was JFK, Staten Island, from 2018 to the walkout in 2020. And at every building, it was the same thing. The same type of injuries, the same type of hire and fire mentality. And what I noticed is the same systematic oppression when it comes to the promotion policies. Amazon's upper management, 70% of Amazon's upper management is white. So what they would do with the black and brown supervisors, including myself, they would put us all on a graveyard shift. So we were out of sight, out of mind. They would put us in positions where we would never excel. They would give me people that couldn't do the work to bring my numbers down. But they failed to do any of that to me, because I knew how to motivate people. No matter how old or young you were, people loved working for me because I was such a nice person and I treated them with respect. So they came in ready to go, and I gave them as much knowledge as possible. I used to tell my new hires, if you got a gym membership, cancel it. Because you're going to be doing 10 to 12 hours of calisthenics. For example, JFK, Staten Island, my warehouse is the size of 14 NFL football fields, the size of 1.5 million square feet. So I basically walk the state of Rhode Island every single day, over 60 miles a day, doing laps, talking to people, making sure I'm following up on them. And I did that every day for 5 years. And not only did I do that, I applied to be a salaried manager over 50 times. In my 5-year tenure, I was only interviewed twice. One of my feedback that I'll never forget till this day was when I was in Windsor, Connecticut. That was my last interview. And the feedback that I got from the HR lady who interviewed me basically said that Chris is a good employee, but Chris will side too much with the workers. And I said, damn, they're right. But I'm still a good employee. I deserve this opportunity. But I watched for years as I trained my white counterparts, and they got promoted right over me with less experience. And I saw, by the time 2020 came, Amazon has this program, what they call, where they basically pay you to quit. For every year that you work at Amazon, you can quit and they'll pay you $1,000. The icing on the cake is they don't tell y'all that it's taxed. So a lot of people, believe it or not, take that, what they call the offer, and they sign so that they can never work for Amazon or any of its companies for their entire life, and they take that deal. And I was ready to do that after my 5 years at Amazon. I was going to take my $5,000. By the way, it's capped, so after 5 years, that's all you get. And I would have walked away with probably $2,500. but not being able to work for Amazon or any of its 75 different companies for the rest of my life. And I can promise you, before COVID became a thing, I was ready to sign that offer because I was so fed up with the mistreatment of myself, with the mistreatment of workers, the amount of blood, sweat, and tears I put into the company over the course of my tenure, and the disrespect of not being able to have an opportunity to become a salary manager, knowing I rightfully deserved it because I trained thousands of Amazon workers. I opened up 3 major warehouses in the tri-state area, and I trained hundreds of their upper management. So much of their upper management that the day I was fired by somebody I trained 4 years prior at my first building. So COVID-19 came into play. It was 2020. Y'all remember they deemed us essential workers. Jeff Bezos was still the CEO. He was making the most money he's ever made at his company. He was the richest man in the world, making $13 billion a day, $9 million an hour, $5,000 a second. And he went on the media, told the media outlets that Amazon workers right now are the closest thing to the Red Cross. And I said, well, he's a lie, because I can tell you now, if somebody falls on the floor, I'm calling 911. I don't even know how to do CPR, but I'm not essential. You know, our health is essential. And I felt that was just the wrong label to give us during that time. I remember driving on the highway, the Jersey Turnpike, going to work, and I was the only car on the road with a piece of paper on my dashboard from Amazon saying that we're allowed to work. Because remember, we were all quarantined, and if you were outside, you had to have some documentation at one point. So it was just an eerie situation for me to be driving to work every day, being the only car on the road in the middle of the night when I got to the warehouse and seeing the news tell us that we need to be home quarantined and socially distanced. So something wasn't adding up. The news was telling us to be quarantined and separate and masked up and protected and stay home, stay away. And Amazon is telling us to come to work. And we're sitting in a cafeteria with 500 people shoulder to shoulder while I'm watching this every day. So I felt, as an assistant manager and probably the most popular employee in the building, I felt that it was my responsibility to speak up on the workers' behalf. So I did. After a meeting with our managers, they told me in this managerial meeting not to tell the 8,300 people at my building that COVID-19 was already in the building. And I just couldn't live with that. As you know, I spent so much time, I considered these people my extended family. There was no way I was not going to be able to do that. So I did the complete opposite. I went out and I told the truth to everybody. And before I led the walkout, with those, some of y'all may not know, it took a week to get up to that point. Every day, I got up from New Jersey and I went to the warehouse off the clock, not paid. And I sat in the cafeteria every day for 10 hours a day, telling every single worker about what's happening in our building and why we need to close the warehouse down right now. By the end of the week on Friday, we all decided, we had a group of about 50 workers, that we wanted to march on the boss. So actually the first march on the boss was before I got fired. And when we marched on the boss, they only allowed me to come talk to them. They had everybody else wait on the outside. And in that meeting, they basically were just bullshitting me. They were telling me, oh, we got to hear from corporate, we're waiting on response. You know, we can't close down the warehouse, it's not a building decision. And I told them, I said, if you guys don't close down this warehouse, you're going to see what we're going to do next. And they tried to give me a disciplinary action talk. And I knew where this was going. So I left and I said, you know what? I'm going to organize a walkout. And I started contacting the media right away. No media outlet was trying to cover this story at first, believe it or not. Trump was still the president. There was a lot of controversy over that. And they weren't trying to hear anything about what we were doing, until I told them that I'm going to have a walkout on Monday, and there's going to be hundreds of workers walking out. So the first article came out by the New York Post, which is not a good outlet, but I said, hey, we'll take it. So what Amazon did, they called me in on Saturday. Well, actually, I went back to the building on Saturday to tell workers, more workers about it. And they quarantined me, just me, out of the thousands of workers. And I broke that quarantine on that following Monday to lead that walkout. 2 hours after that walkout, I was fired. It cost me my job, but I cost the company $4 billion. The next day, they had to hand deliver PPE to my building and to every building around the country and around the world. Yeah. And I knew, I always reflect back on that, because I can't imagine if I didn't speak up or do what I did, or, put my job at risk, put my life at risk, the amount of workers who could have potentially brought this virus home. New York City was the epicenter at the time. Every 15 minutes, somebody was dying in New York City. My mom works at Mount Sinai Hospital. She's been there for 20 years. And she would call me every day and tell me about the tractor-trailer trucks full of dead bodies right outside. The hospitals were so packed that they didn't even have enough room for the dead bodies. Some bodies were left outside in trucks for 7 days, for multiple weeks. Some people were left in their homes for weeks at a time. And Amazon workers, once again, we were on the front lines. So what I did was, something that I'll do again, and I don't regret it, because once again, I know people who lost their lives during that time as well. That being said, Amazon doubled down on my activism. The day I was fired, I was on prime time with a lot of media outlets. And I'll never forget the anchor's face when I told him that I got fired. He was so shocked. And I was like, well, yeah, what'd you expect? Like, I let her walk out, so I expected to be fired. But I didn't realize they violated my rights as a worker, as an employee. And there's actually a law coveted in the state of New York that you can't be fired for protesting about health and safety. I had no idea. And a lot of people don't know their rights. And I bring that up because it's very important that you do your homework and know your state laws, know your federal laws, know your rights as a worker at any job, and read the fine print. So when I saw his reaction, I said, wow, maybe I can continue to advocate even though I no longer work at the company. And I was correct. Later on that evening, I got a call to go on MSNBC with Chris Haynes at 8 p.m. And I'll never forget the producer calling me and telling me, he said, I don't know who the hell you are, but Amazon has called us 30 times trying to get you off the air. And I said, no, you got to get me on. And that day, when they put me on at 8 p.m., was the first time that not only the entire world knew what's really going on behind the scenes, but every worker, 2.5 million workers worldwide, got a notification for the first time about COVID-19 cases in their building. And our phones just started lighting up. I'll never forget, I was on air, I said what I said, I basically whistle blew, and everybody's phone was lighting up like Christmas tree. Just notification after notification. And that was the power of really just speaking truth to power. Had I not did what I did, once again, these workers would have went unknown. And you would think that the company would clean up their act, but unfortunately, that's not the corporate model. Jeff Bezos doubled down or tripled down at this point because he wasn't done. He said, we're going to call in what they call the S team at Amazon. It's him and about 15 other top executives, all millionaires, and they meet up in their corporate office in Seattle, Washington, and they had a meeting about me. And in that meeting, they said that I'm not smart or articulate to make him the face of the whole unionizing efforts against Amazon so that we don't have to answer questions about health and safety for the umpteenth time. Signed by Jeff Bezos. Somebody in that room, shout out to whoever that is, because I'm pretty sure they fired him right away. He leaked that conversation to the news. And once that came out, the media came flocking back on me again. And I say all of this to tell you guys that my entire life flipped upside down in less than 24 hours. I had no intentions on being an activist, had no intentions on being a union organizer, had no intentions on doing any of this work. I was just trying to speak out about health and safety concerns for my fellow workers. And when I reflect back on that, you know, it's really powerful to tell my story, because that could be anybody in this room could do exactly what I've done. And that's what I like to tell, is that you don't have to be, you know, an organizer or an activist. You don't have to continue to fight or stand up all the time. Sometimes the opportunity to come to your doorstep and you're going to be forced to make a decision. And that's what I did. I embraced the moment. I realized that a lot of attention was on me. And I would like to throw this in as well, because this is relevant. We just lost one of the greatest civil rights leaders of our time, one of them, Jesse Jackson. Believe it or not, Jesse Jackson was the first person to call me when I got fired. And I still, till this day, don't even know how he got my cell phone number. I thought it was a prank when he called me, because even 6 years ago, he was still dealing with Parkinson's, and even longer than that. And it was amazing that Jesse Jackson, the man who walked with Martin Luther King, called my cell phone out of nowhere. And in less than 15 minutes, he gave me a lawyer. Didn't even ask. But one thing he said to me was that I reminded him of a young Martin Luther King. And those words really touched me. You know, I think I even broke down crying in my room like a baby, because I'm like, man, I don't even know what I'm doing right now. And yeah, you know, over the years, you know, rest in peace, Jesse Jackson. Over the years, he became a really good mentor to me. He used to send me texts all the time, call me all the time, send me Bible verses, because, you know, he's a reverend. He invited me to Chicago a few times. He rewarded me. He stood side by side with me against Amazon very early on. I even watched this man get arrested right in front of me in Washington, D.C. during the People's March back in 2022. And he got arrested, got bailed out, and then went and delivered a powerful speech, and then took me out to dinner. And I'm like, man, this dude is amazing. And you know, once again, rest in peace to Jesse Jackson. Definitely, once again, somebody who's a prominent figure in the civil rights movement and in many movements. As you know, he stood with Palestine. He stood with many different struggles across the world. And he actually was the reason why Obama was even a thing. And ironically, he was also running for president the year I was born. So it's all full circle to me. That being said, you know, during those times, I embraced the moment, but I didn't have all the answers. I knew that I had to advocate because of the spotlight that I had. So I started a nonprofit organization called the Congress of Essential Workers. And I took this nonprofit and I protested in front of every Jeff Bezos house in America. Started in New York City at his $180 million penthouse. And then we drove down to Washington, D.C. to his $28 million mansion, which is a former museum with 28 bathrooms. I don't know how many shits you got to take in a day, but who needs 28 bathrooms? I guess billionaires. And then we went out west to Beverly Hills to his $165 million mansion. Then we went up to Seattle to his $28 million mansion as well. He's neighbors to Bill Gates. We found that out, you know, when we were met with the police presence. And we also protested at the corporate headquarters in front of the Spears and also in front of his main headquarters. And I could tell you, every protest that I put together against Amazon, Amazon specifically hires police. And I don't mean just one or two cops. They hire entire departments to be at every protest that I ever done for Amazon. Still, till this day, if I was to go on social media right now and say that I'm going to the Amazon warehouse here in Mass, I would be met with police presence by the time I get to that warehouse. And when I realized that Amazon was watching and surveilling us and trying to discourage people to join us. For about a year, we did these activities, and we were also paying attention to the campaign that happened in Bessemer, Alabama, simultaneously. And we thought that it was very promising. It looked promising on paper. They had a lot of support. You may have remembered a lot of politicians were showing up, Bernie, all the progressives were driving down to Alabama. They had a lot of celebrities behind them. So we actually wanted to see what it was about. So we took me and 4 other Amazon workers from New York City, drove down 16 hours to Alabama. We spent a week in Bessemer trying to learn what these workers were feeling about joining up with the RWDSU. What were the pros, what were the cons, and were they going to be successful? We went the week of their election. We tried to connect with workers. We spoke to them. And unfortunately, what we got back, the feedback we got was not good. You know, Amazon was spending $25 million on that campaign. They put a police presence at every entrance, so the organizers, the union organizers, couldn't even talk to the workers. They changed the traffic lights so that cars couldn't even stop to grab literature. And workers were afraid to even talk to them because Amazon put so much fear and doubt into the workforce that I could tell you right now, before the election results came out, I knew that they weren't going to win. I felt it. Every worker we talked to were afraid. They were scared. They even said that they don't know the union very well. And it just wasn't what was seen on the news, what was seen on social media as a promising campaign. And we paid attention to every detail. I'll give you out the demographics of that building, though. In Bessemer, Alabama, that warehouse was brand new. It employs over 6,000 workers there. 85% of the workers there are Black and brown. 80% of that building is Black women. And Amazon still spent $20+ million stopping that building from unionizing. So not only was it blatant racism, which they played into heavily, we looked at our warehouse in Staten Island, New York, and we said, we got similar demographics. You know, our building is 8,300 people, but majority of our workforce is Black and brown. And we took that to heart, that Amazon stopped this campaign and stopped these workers from fighting for their rights and unionizing. So we decided after the election results came out that we were going to do it ourselves, but do it independently, grassroots, worker-led, because we as Amazon workers, whether we're former or current workers, we know the company better than anybody, even better than Jeff Bezos himself. And we know the ins and outs. We know what we need to fight for. And we can go inside the warehouse and talk to people, not be on the outside as a third party. So on April 20th, that's our birthday, by the way, 4/20 for those who don't know. On 4/20/2021, we started our campaign. I set up an encampment at a bus stop right outside the warehouse for over 300+ days, 11 months, rain or shine, hot or cold, night or day, talking to workers coming, going to work, trying to convince them to not only sign up for this independent union, but we had to spend months educating them on what a union is. Because for those who don't know, union density in this country is less than 6% in the private sector and less than 9% in the public sector. So even though they call New York City a union town, and they say 1 out of every 5 workers there are in a union, workers still don't know what a union is. And on top of that, we're in Staten Island. And for those who don't know, there's a lot of bad stigmas when it comes to Staten Island, especially when we're talking about the mob and the mafia and Jimmy Hoffa and what they did with the Teamsters back in those days. So that actually still resonated. We had to educate workers on a number of different topics. But the best accountability is availability. And I would tell my organizers, if we're not there to have that conversation whenever the worker's ready, that's a missed opportunity. So us being there to talk to them, to educate them, to have not just one conversation, but several conversations was the sacrifice that we were willing to take. And it was working. Because Amazon, although Amazon was spending millions of dollars trying to stop our campaign, the one thing they couldn't calculate was the power of people when we come together. They had all the money and power, the robots, the technology to calculate their profits, to calculate how many people they hire and fire, but they couldn't figure out how we were so connected, how we were grassroots, how we were able to resonate with every worker. You know why? It's because they never did care. They only looked at us as profitable. Or, once again, as Jeff Bezos said, industrial athletes. Did y'all know that Amazon in 30 years has already hired and fired the entire American workforce? 1 out of every 4 Americans is going to work at Amazon. You may already know somebody, maybe yourselves. But even if you don't work at Amazon, I remind you that they own 75 different companies. So my fight and the Amazon labor union fight is everybody's fight. Because this company, in less than 30 years, has completely changed how we act and interact in society. Just in 10 or 15 years, by a show of hands, how many of y'all was shopping on Amazon 15 years ago? What about 10 years ago? What about now? So in less than 15 years, we completely destroyed our own communities by giving all our money to somebody who doesn't need it. By giving all of our money to one company, we watched our mom and pop stores go out of business. We watch our local main streets evaporate. We watch our shopping malls become a dying breed. And the most important thing is we stop human interaction. A lot of people are afraid to even knock on your neighbor's door. And the reason why I said I grew up in the 90s, that's the best time, is because remember that saying that it takes a village to raise a child? Well, that was the time that we grew up in, where my mom would be working 2 jobs, but she didn't have to worry about my well-being because my neighbors kept an eye on me. The crossing guard kept an eye on us. People in the community kept an eye on all of the children. And if we needed to borrow something, we would knock on our neighbor's door. Can we borrow some sugar? Can we borrow some milk? Those days are long gone. Now people are afraid to even knock on their neighbor's door. They don't know their neighbors. They're afraid to talk to people. When you go to these shopping malls now, stores, everything is cashless. There's no cashier. There's no human interaction. Even when you go to the airport, all of these things that we're seeing in society is because we were giving our money to Amazon. And Amazon has completely changed how we actually interact as human beings in such a short amount of time. And I witnessed it firsthand. So we got to remind ourselves where we came from and what we need to do. But the best tool of organizing and the reason why we were able to defeat Amazon is because we went back to the basics. We went back to face, talking to people, meeting people where they at, which is work. For 11 months, we not only spent educating and fighting back against Amazon, but we also didn't have any support. No major union wanted to help us. No politician showed up for us. Every labor expert in this country, there was some articles that were coming out saying that, we had no chance. And people didn't believe in us. The day we actually beat Amazon, we had $2.50 in our bank account. The next day, we had $500,000. It was so close. Actually, it wasn't even close. But the media had already wrote every headline that we lost the election before we even had our election. They had to change their title an hour before. And I was told this by the New York Times. That's how much people didn't believe in our movement. But when we did win, not only did we spark a resurgence in the labor movement, but it resonated around the entire world to millions of people And I had no idea, we had no idea that it would even reach that amount of people. We knew we did something historical and powerful, but we really didn't understand what we did until afterwards, the aftermath, because the bandwagon came. Now here comes the politicians. You know, I had to tweet to get AOC to come. She finally did. She brought Bernie with her. All of these same politicians, the progressives, the Jamal Bowmans, the Cori Bushes, you name them. They all showed up. They all reached out to me. All of the unions in this country, the major unions, they invited me as keynote speakers, panel discussions, workshops, rallies, protests. If you've been following me over the years, you've seen all the work I've done, all the places I've been. And at the time, I didn't even have a passport. I got a passport after we won. I just got my passport maybe 3-4 years ago. And since then, I've been to over 45 different countries. I've been to plenty of third world countries, a lot of countries that are ran by socialism, communism, ran by trade union as well, a lot of countries that have higher union density. And I learned so much over the course of my tenure and my journey as the president. But I say all this because I want to bring you up to speed. When I got back from being captured in Israel, it was a shame to see that all of these politicians, all of these unions, all of these people that I met over the years that praised us for our work at Amazon said absolutely nothing about what happened to me. And not to toot my horn, but you know, to be one of the biggest labor leaders to emerge in modern times, our labor movement failed and still continues to fail the working class. And that was the most shocking thing, to see that none of them, with the exception of the nurses, the National Nurses Union, and my union, of course, even put out a statement condemning what happened to me as a labor leader. It was a shame. But now, you know the truth. You know that all of these politicians, AOC, Bernie, even Mondani, they all in my DMs. They all reached out to me at some point in time. They all said nothing. And y'all know, y'all seen that I was invited all the way up to the White House 2 years ago. I met Joe Biden, met Kamala Harris. Nothing. But you know what? Doesn't matter, because when I did come home and I shut down JFK Airport, I came home to the community. The ones who've been there with me from day one, my entire union was there. The people that I met that was always in the trenches, always doing amazing work, was there. People flew in from all over the country, as far as LA, just to see me for those few minutes, was there. And I know that you guys were there in spirit, because I know how much over the years, the connections I built, the relationships I built with the folks up here. And that's all I needed. And what Palestine has done is shown people who they are. And that's why we must all continue to fight, because we all have a role to play. People want to ask me all the time, how did you get involved with the Palestinian resistance movement? Well, it's simple. As a trade unionist, we take an oath to protect the entire working class. One of our quotes is, an injury to one is an injury to all. It doesn't say injury to one, injury to all, except if you're Palestinian. And when we're talking about being a trade unionist or an activist, it is our responsibility to be the shield for the working class, the entire working class. And when I saw what happened, let me tell you where I was, actually. when October 7th happened, I was in one of the largest Palestinian diasporas in the world, outside of Palestine. It's in Berlin, Germany, actually. There's about 40,000 Palestinians that live there. And I was in their community the week of October 7th. And I was walking down the street in their community, and I watched as their Nazi police, just like the Holocaust, set up the tables in the middle of the street, set up paddy wagon vans, arrest Palestinians right in front of me, tore down every Palestinian flag in the community. Anybody who says free Palestine was violently arrested right in front of me. And I'm talking about as little as 8-year-old kids, zip-tied, carried off, and that still happens till this day. And I took a little 1 to 2 minute video, and I shared it on my Instagram. And you can still go back and watch. And instantly, I lost 10,000 followers. 5,000 on Instagram, another 5,000 on Twitter X. People were flooding my DMs saying, I supported you with Amazon, but this is where I draw the line. You know, my response to them is, fuck you. I know who was there with me when I took on Amazon. It definitely wasn't you. And not only that, I don't give a damn. What we're seeing, what we're witnessing, it's not right. And I don't want my children to grow up in a society where they're gonna watch on live stream a genocide. So yeah, 10,000 followers, people flooding my DMs, people talking negative about me now. And I said, this is a familiar feeling. I felt this before when I took on Amazon and nobody believed in us. So what I always do, I double down into my work. And I said, okay, I'm going to continue to fight along the sides of the Palestinian resistance movement. I'm going to continue to advocate on their behalf. And I'm going to join every protest that I could in the New York City area, which I did. And I also joined the students at Columbia University on their first day. I felt the importance as a labor leader to make sure that our presence is felt. You know what I also told them? I told them if any politicians show up, don't let them in. They actually didn't, which I'm proud to say. And also, thanks to them, I ended up on Canary Mission. So you're looking at a labor leader that's doxxed, which I wear with a badge of honor. But going back to, the things that I've lost, I can promise you this. If you spoke about Palestine, you lost something. Everybody in this room that's done so, you lost something, right? Whether it's friendship, relationships, family members, financial opportunities, career opportunities, even your education. It's all at risk. I lost tremendously, even when I took on Amazon. But what I lost when it came to Palestine is, financial security for not just myself, but for my union. We were offered, at least my story, my journey was offered at a Hollywood film company, reached out, and they wanted to offer me a film deal. 6 major Hollywood production companies came to my doorstep and offered me over $1 million each to make a film about me and what happened at Amazon. And every last one of them pulled out. I actually signed a $2 million Hollywood film production deal to try to get a movie, because I knew the importance of telling our story and having it on a major screen and reaching massive audiences around the world. And I knew that if I don't take or jump on top of this opportunity, that I'll never get it again. And I was going to take that money and do what I always do, put it right back into the work. And I signed that deal. But then, once they saw that I was talking about Palestine, they pulled it. But before they pulled that deal, they actually gave us enough funding to make our documentary that Chris was talking about. So, thankfully, we were able to finish up the doc. The doc was very powerful. It's only 90 minutes, but we spent, once again, over 300 days. So the things that I'm telling you are things you won't even see in the doc. And that being said, despite everything that I lost, none of that shit mattered to me. I never did this for money. I never did this for fame. Even though the media, puts a bright light on me at times. I've done some red carpet events. I've done this, the Times 100. None of that matters to me. Because, once again, that's all material stuff. And I never did it for that. I did it because I always said this in the very beginning, that it's never going to be Amazon versus Chris Smalls. It's going to be Amazon versus the people. And till this day, I still live by that. And when people ask me, what's your title? Yeah, I may be the founder of the union, the former president, but my favorite title is to tell them I'm a fired Amazon worker that was pissed off. Because that's the best title. Not forgetting where I came from and how I got here. And every day I wake up and I have thousands of emails from workers around the world, horrible stories, Amazon workers, even other sectors, other organizations, other businesses, people that's working in other workplaces, emailing me, telling me different things about what's going on and how my story is inspiring and how what we're doing inspired them to start organizing. And I ask myself this question every single day. If I don't get up and do this work, who's going to do it? And that's the same question you guys should ask. When you get up every day, ask yourselves, if you don't get up, who is going to do this work? Because it comes with great sacrifice. And this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. This is a lifetime fight that we all signed up for. Some of the ancestors that we know and we love paved the way for us to do this work. So we must continue that legacy and carry that torch. And Palestine has shown the world the moral compass of where humanity is facing and where we're going. And if we do not do anything, we are just complicit as the governments that are continuing to carry out this genocide. So we all have a role to play in this worldwide revolution that we are experiencing. And yes, it is a revolution, but of course in America, it is very retroactive. But remind yourselves that not only do you have to sacrifice for the greater good, that if you want to be revolutionary, that the revolution starts with yourself. What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to lose? What are you willing to give up? How much time are you willing to stay away from your kids? Because I could tell you, I lost thousands of days. But understanding the reason why I got on that flotilla, as a black man, as a father, as a trade unionist, most importantly, as an American citizen, all of us should be outraged that our tax-paying dollars has gone towards killing over 680,000 Palestinians and counting. There is no ceasefire. And I can tell you this, if we don't stand up and fight back, there's no cavalry coming for us either. So we must do more. We must continue to fight. We must continue to stand up. The dock workers in Italy has shown us what we can do with our power. A few weeks ago, I was on the ground with them. But we're not done. The flotilla mission, that's another way of direct action. What you're seeing with these student encampments, powerful movement around the world. I could tell you I visited encampments in America, but also overseas. People are paying attention to America right now. I just came back from London and Italy last week, and Sweden as well. And I'm telling you right now, we're the laughing stock of the world. People are like, what the hell are we doing over here? Hey, they're rightfully right. But there is hope because we have each other. We have the power. And every time our government fails us, it's up to us, the people, to stand up and fight back. So when you leave here today, think about what ways that you can contribute to this movement. What side of history that you want to remain on. And also remind yourselves that the power will always remain with the people. Love and solidarity is how we will win. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris, for an incredible talk and just for being an incredible inspiration. And I can't think of anyone who's a better example of commitment to labor, international solidarity, and just the courage that it takes to do this work. So thanks so much. And it's great to have you back at UMass, and it's great to see so many people on a cold evening.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start with a couple of questions, and then we're going to open it up because I'm sure people have things they want to hear about. But I wanted to go back and hear a little bit more about the work at Amazon, and then we can talk about, how you made the leap from the very local to global international issues. Because you talked about your experience, which is kind of this incredible story from someone who really believed in Amazon. You're an assistant manager, you wanted to move up in the company, and then became a whistleblower and ended up doing this organizing. So I wanted to just hear a little bit more from you about what it takes to do that organizing, because it's really unusual to have, you're the only Amazon warehouse that was able to successfully organize. You worked with more than 8,000 workers, you change their minds, and it's a hard workforce to organize, right? It's people, there's incredible turnover. As you said, there's so many people who are new every year. Amazon spent tens of millions of dollars on propaganda, trying to convince people that they were lucky to work for such a great company, and to scare people that they would lose their jobs and the warehouse might shut down if they organized. So, for example, what's different about the work you did than what happened in Bessemer, Alabama, or in some of the other places? And give us a sense of what that organizing looked like.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha, perfect. Yeah, I think the difference was, once again, because we were actual Amazon workers, whether we were former or current, we had a different relationship with the workforce in the building. In real time, for example, Amazon put the workers, and if you watch the film Union, you'll see that they put us in what they call captive audiences. The film only shows y'all 1 or 2 meetings, but they did that over 3,000 times. Every day, for 1 hour a day, they would bring people into a classroom setting and have a millionaire, somebody who was a millionaire, tell these people to vote against their interests. And they would lie, make up lies about me. They would say I'm nothing but a union thug, or your money is going to buy Chris Smalls a Lamborghini, not knowing I'm a BMW type of guy. They would just say any type of thing, like the ALU has no experience, or they have no experience on bargaining with a company. They would just make up these different things and try to calculate our dues for the workers. But in the room, every meeting, there was somebody from our organizing committee to stand up and rebuttal that real time and debunk that and shut down the meeting. And one thing I know about working at Amazon is just like working or being a part of a college campus or a high school where rumors spread like wildfire, right? Whether they're true or false. So what we did when we got word that they were going to do their first initial captive audience, we said we're going to, in the film you see, you're going to see a moment where we're like, we're going to go in there, we're going to march, and we're going to shut it down. That one shutdown spread to every shift, and all it was, did you hear about what the Amazon labor union did? They shut down the meetings because what Amazon did, after we shut down the first meeting, they canceled the rest of them for the rest of the day. So that was a major victory, even though it was something small. They brought the meetings back, but that one day, that 24 hours, we were able to show the strength of the union. And workers really paid attention to the fact that we were able to get Amazon to fall back on captive audiences. And now, when the meeting started up again, we had other workers standing up on our behalf, fighting back, saying, you guys are lying to us, because we looked up, and what we also did, we printed out the people who were speaking. We used to find their salaries and print it out and say, hey, reward $10,000 a day. So they couldn't really say all of the rhetoric that they were using in Bessemer. It didn't work in New York City. And the biggest mistake they did, they brought some of the union buses from Alabama, some white man, to come up to New York City and try to spread some racism. And I can tell you now, New York City is a different monster. You're going to get cursed the hell out. And he learned the hard way that he can't come up here talking about, black people is a bunch of Black Lives Matter protesters and the things he was saying about me, calling me a thug and this and that. And we quickly got him fired, because what Amazon would do, if a union buster became no good to them, they would just bring in another group every week, flying in new groups. And we would just, once again, catch Pokemon and call it out. And, it became a little game after a while for us. And the workers definitely paid attention to what was really truthful, because we were the workers.
I guess, just quickly, what do you think it would take to do that kind of organizing on the international? I know this is a huge question, but you talked about going from the very local Amazon organizing to working on Palestine and, all the hate or just the silence that met you. And I wonder what you're thinking about what kind of organizing it would take to change minds in the same way that you did at Amazon.
Two things I wanted to touch on real quick. Number one, the reason why, and this also goes back to your last question as well, is like, the reason why we're still the only in one building in our country that's unionized is because not only are labor unions failing to meet the moment, but they're just failing grassroots efforts. They're not invested. Otherwise, they would be on the front lines whenever we're doing encampments or protests or rallies. And number two, labor unions continuously allow politics and politicians to run their entities. Why are we endorsing politicians that give us nothing in return? And particularly with our union, we don't endorse politicians. That's in our Constitution. We don't care how progressive you are. We don't care if you're Mondani, which also he showed up and took pictures with us too. We don't care. We want to see what you do first so that we can then endorse you or in some capacity support you. We won't really endorse you, but we will support whatever agenda it is. And I'll give you another example. Every presidential candidate came to my office last year and met with me that ran against Trump or Biden. Cornel West, Jill Stein, Claudia De La Cruz from the Party of Socialism, and Marianne Williamson. They all came and sat with me, and they were texting me, Chris, what do we do? How do we get unions to endorse us? And I told them, I said, all of these unions are going to endorse the Democrats. They've been doing it for 60 years. And because of that, they've been selling the working class out. Not only are the Democrats selling the working class out, but unions are by continuously endorsing that. There's no way in hell our union should endorse Kamala Harris. What was she ever done for working class people? But they vote blue no matter who, and that's one of our major issues that I've seen with the labor movement, is that we continuously, or even worse, support the two-party system, because there was some labor unions that said, fuck it, we're gonna endorse Republicans now. The Teamsters included, they gave Trump $40,000. So seeing all of this is one major reason why they didn't say anything about me when I went to Palestine. But also, the larger issue is the disconnect that our labor unions are failing to meet grassroots efforts, and they're failing the working class right now. That's why our union density is continuously going down, because they're not organizing. They're looking for shortcuts, and they're looking for politicians to come save them. And we have to hold them accountable.
Okay, we're almost out of time, but if there are questions, please line up at the mic, and we have time for a couple of questions. And then I think Chris is a source of boundless energy, so I bet he'll be willing to stick around and talk to people afterwards as well.
Thank you so much. I'll just start saying that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Been talking about national strikes in some corners, and I wondered what your thoughts are. I heard people talking about May Day, the 1st of May. I can't see that happening without unions.
Yeah.
Should it happen? Will it happen? What unions? What are some steps? Is this a good thing or not? Thank you.
Yeah.
Should we get a couple of questions and then?
Yeah, I mean, I smoke a lot of weed, so I don't know. We'll see how this goes.
Go ahead. We'll get 3 questions and then we'll hear.
Yeah, we can do it. We can do more.
Okay.
Sorry. You talked earlier about people being extremely socially isolated even within their own communities, and obviously this has been particularly a problem in these workplace environments. What are some of, in your experience, like the best tools and strategies for actually breaking those down in both communities and working environments and working communities to try to get people to actually come together and get to those even just first steps towards either unionization or any sort of collective action in these and out of their, individual little cells?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, one more.
Hi, Chris. I'm Amalia. I'm an organizer, super inspired by you. 2 things. 1, I feel like a lot of people think that they're not in the working class, but they actually are. Would you mind letting folks know what it means to be in the working class? Number 2, you talked about what are you willing to lose? What are you willing to sacrifice? Can you talk a little bit about what you gain in return? Mm-hmm. That priceless thing that we gain in return when we're willing to be class traders, as a middle class kid, but also when you're willing to stick with the people.
Yeah.
What do you gain? Thank you.
Great questions. I'll start with the May Day. I'm I would say I'm short-lived activist. So over the years, I've seen some repetitive things, even in my short time as a labor leader, as an activist. And I love to call a general strike in this country. But we got to be realistic with ourselves when we're not nowhere near that. Just think about it. We watched a white woman get shot in her face, right? In Minneapolis. And the unions in that particular community called the National Day of Action. They didn't even call it a strike. We did that. The community outside of Minneapolis said, oh, that's a general strike. And then I knew that it was dead when I saw celebrities posting National Day of Strike, knowing damn well these celebrities ain't going outside. And we have this, we're in such dire need for hope and desperation that we want it, but we don't know how to get there. But we can't be performative and we can't lie to ourselves. For the labor movement to claim that that was the largest strike in American history in the last 80 years, that's an embarrassment. For them to say that 50,000 people in Minneapolis, that's a population of 6.8 million people, to say that that was the largest labor strike in 80 years. And you go on their Twitter and AFL-CIO and you'll see all of this stuff, that they're actually claiming that as something powerful. Let me tell y'all, in Italy, they brought out 3 million people. What are we talking about here? So, yes, I would love to see a general strike in our country, but we got to be real. Our labor unions are bullshitting us, because how can they speak out about ICE but don't say shit about Palestine? Doesn't make any sense to me. The first thing we need to do is escape the two-party system, like I said. Second thing we got to do is hold our labor unions accountable. If you're a dues-paying member, now is your time. I don't give a damn you're a rank and file or a delegate, a stewardess, a rep, whatever. Now is your time. Leadership, if they ain't with it, they got to go. They got to do something. We can't allow our unions to continuously be disconnected from the working class and then show up every so often and then go on social media and tweet a post and think that we're going to follow suit. It's never going to work that way. Secondly, this ties into your question, is, I'll be honest with you, organizing and some of these trade unions, when it comes to appealing to the younger generation, it's just not there. Organizing doesn't look fun. I can tell you and I can attest that I know how many of y'all have stressful days when you leave a meeting, you have arguments, infighting, disagreements, or you go somewhere, you're thinking that you're gonna have a lot of momentum and then nobody shows up, discouraging moments. So these are real issues. But the problem is we're not thinking outside of the box. The reason why we were able to win at Amazon is not only because we went against the traditional style of organizing, it's because we were creative and willing to be different. If you watch the film, yeah, we did give out free weed. I couldn't think of anything else. But I knew I'm a good chess player. And when they put us in checkmate, I said, damn, I got 24 hours to come up with something outside of the box. So I said, what am I good at? I'm good at talking to people, and I'm good at smoking weed. So to be honest with you, that's just one example. I bring that up because that's the funniest, but we gave out books. We gave out clothes in the wintertime. We gave out scarves. We gave out hats. We gave out food. We gave out Uber rides if people needed to get home. We gave out money if somebody needed something. There was a homeless woman in our film, Natalie. I raised her $8,000. The film is not going to tell you that, but I actually found her housing. And we also gave out backpacks during the beginning of the school year for single parents. We did a number of different things outside of the box, something that Amazon would never do. And it works. And that's what you got to do with your organizing, and whatever you're fighting for, you got to think outside of the box, be creative, be fun, be spontaneous. Don't just do the traditional, oh, we're going to have a meeting, we're going to have a rally, we're going to hand out a flyer, and we're going to do this every 3 months. Do it differently, be consistent. As I told you in the beginning, availability is the best accountability. You may be radicalized, but when you go to that cafeteria and there's all those hundreds of students that don't know shit from shit, what you're talking about, if you're not there to have that conversation when they're ready, that's a missed opportunity on you. So be there, show up, learn who they are, befriend them, know what they like, what they don't like on a personal level. And make your organizing fun, for the love of God. Please be different. Don't do the same thing you see over and over. Think outside of the box. That's always the best way to bring people in. And now the last question, I need help with that.
People are not identifying as working class, and also what good did you get out of doing this work?
Man, yeah, that's true. I mean, it's funny you bring that up about the working class, because it reminded me of my book that's coming out in June, right? One version in the U.S., it says the title is When the Revolution Comes, A Fight for the Working Class. But in the UK side, they were like, oh, you have to change that because we don't have a working class. I was like, what the fuck? Like, what are you talking about? You don't have a working class. Like, I go to London and UK all the time. I'm like, you definitely got a working class. You may not know that, but you have a working class. They maybe changed the title for the UK version. That being said, yeah, just got to educate people. You know, a lot of people just, you know, unfortunately, we are the most. So you can show. Oh, shit. How you get this? She got an early copy. Here you go. Damn, this is the first time I've seen it. Man, where'd you get this from? All right, nah. All right. I'll talk to you afterwards. Well, here you go. I mean, here's a first look. Let me tell you real quick about this cover, though. This cover picture, it's funny because I don't talk about Palestine in this book. It's a memoir. It's about my life. A lot of it you heard already tonight, but there's some other things in there that you definitely haven't heard. But this picture was taken in London, ironically, at one of their largest Palestinian protests, where it brought out 1 million people last year. And the reason why I chose this picture to be on this cover, because I can tell you the publishing probably didn't really want to. They did not want me talking about Palestine, as I felt that there was some tension at certain times throughout the process of making this book. I felt like they didn't even want to make it really after they already gave me the deal. And when they gave me example pictures, they had about 4 different versions, and then they had this one at the bottom. And I said, no, I want that one. And then we were going back and forth. They're like, are you sure? And I'm like, I'm sure. I want this one with the keffiyeh on and with my Eat the Rich jacket, because not only was this keffiyeh taken from me and thrown in the garbage when they captured me in Israel, this Eat the Rich jacket that you may have seen me wear over the years, this is actually going in the Martin Luther King exhibit that's opening up on May Day this year at the National Civil Rights Museum in Tennessee. So, fun fact for you to know that I deliberately chose this. But going back to what I've gained, besides a book deal, I gained a huge burden. Let's be real. I'm a black man leading something powerful. I have a lot of different targets on my back. I do get death threats. I am doxxed on Canary Mission. I am being tracked by Israel. I am on the terrorist list. I'm all of the above. I'm a menace to society. Everywhere I go, if I tweet, I'll post that I'm going somewhere, the police will be there waiting for me. Everywhere, every Amazon warehouse in the world. So what I've gained is a huge burden on my shoulders. But they chose the right person, because in my own individual thoughts, I remind myself that what happens to me doesn't happen to everybody. And embracing the fact that I was chosen to do this work, sometimes I feel like, there's a higher power that's guiding me spiritually. Everything that I do, I always try to remind myself, once again, that if I don't get up and do it, nobody else is going to do this work. So the burden that I wear because I know I'm built for it. If I wasn't, I wouldn't be here. It's just that simple. I can tell you now, this ain't for everybody. This ain't for the weak. You can't have one foot in this fight and one foot out. It doesn't work that way. You all know from organizing in your own capacities that people, they leave this movement in the drop of a dime. One argument, one little petty fight, one disagreement, they'll walk right out and don't give a damn. They'll walk right past you. So for me to go through all of the things I've done, all the things I continue to go through, you know, I have to have thick skin, and I have to wear this burden of knowing that, you know, what's coming my way is, you know, when they say they will come for you, I got to be prepared for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, you know, what always weighs in on me is, once again, this country's dark history when it comes to Black leaders. You know, most of us don't survive past the age of 40. So jokingly, what I tell my people is I still got a few more years. So while I'm here, I'm going to give them hell and fight like hell and do it everything I can.
And we're with you in solidarity. So just another huge thank you to you, Chris, for being here and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.